Hello and welcome to the Paris Fintech Forum Communities Programme. I'm Elliot Gotkin, I'm a journalist and with Laurent Nisri, co-host of this exclusive video interview series produced with the support of Xaalys Bank, Rise and BPI France. My guest today is a pioneer in the burgeoning teenage banking space, founding Xaalys to help financially liberate and educate adolescents while enabling parents to maintain tabs on their kids' spending. Diana Brondel, CEO and founder of Xaalys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
And how are things over there in Paris?
Hot today. And no, we are managing, but I think it's like everybody with the COVID, around the COVID. So a lot of uncertainty, but we're still going on.
That's great. Well, look, tell us more about Xaalys, because I guess if you're not a teenager or a parent of a teenager, you may not be overly familiar with the company.
Exactly. So Xaalys is a neobank, so everything is 100% digital and app-based. And the idea was really to build an application with two interfaces, one for the teenager to start being more at ease around money, knowing how to manage how much you have, getting your first debit card, and also being able to be taught some financial literacy content directly in app. And financial literacy goes with two things. I always like to say it's learning by doing. So you have some saving tabs, you have some wish lists, you also have rough content, so some quizzes, some games. And on the other hand, on the parent interface, the parent can really follow up. So he can give his kid money, he can really set and customize the tool, and I think this is really a key feature because being a mom myself, two parents will not have the same relationship with money and they will not give the same space around money when you have somebody who is 12, 14, or even if you are from two separate families. So the idea was really to build a tool which every parent can really take and make sure that the way it is customized reflects the relationship they want their own kids to have with money.
And why teens? Is it because it's a relatively untapped market? Because I know it's becoming quite a crowded space, but what was the idea of going after this particular niche?
Okay, I come from the banking space, so I spent 10 years in banking, and even though like there were more and more digital offers, like around 2015, like we had number 26, Revolut, everybody coming into the French market, so the whole banking system was really upgrading, but the teen offer was not properly addressed. So the idea was really to go into that space. So I've started, as you say today, the space is pretty crowded. But when I started in 2017, when I founded the company, there were no solutions. And the idea was really to go into that space because it was interesting. And it will further enable us to make some partnerships with some banking, with some with some distributors. So there was no offer when I launched my product. There was no offer adapted to that segment. And that segment,
I was just going to say, what happens when teens turn 18? Do they just stay with you? Do you have products for adults, young adults?
No, I don't. I really stay focused on the teen space. And when they turn 18, the idea is to work in partnership with the bank or with another new bank that is better suited for their needs from 18 to, let's say, above.
Okay. And I know you're backed. I think one of your investors is Bouygues Telecom, which is France's third largest mobile network. Could this kind of presage closer collaboration? Perhaps, Xaalys being rolled out to all Bouygues teens. Is that the idea? Is that like a strategic investment rather than just an investor
Yes,
like any other?
yeah, no, definitely. That was and that is one of the things we are thinking about and we are working on because Big Telecom, contrary to Orange Bank, for instance, doesn't have a fintech and doesn't have a bank. So the idea was to say, since Bouygues is the one who will equip the teens with their smartphones. Why not imagine embark Xaalys directly when you buy your phone? Why not have a combined offer? When you take your telephone and your scheme, also to have to have in the same time your Xaalys card. And what was very interesting with Bouygues is that we really had kind of the same strategy, in the sense that Bouygues, when your parents are within Bouygues, you usually are within Bouygues, and the idea was to say, okay, so this could be really very interesting both for the parents and for the teenagers, and constitute an additional value layer in Bouygues' product offer.
I've got to ask you, Diana, because if there's one thing that is bound to make kids not want something, it's if teenagers want something, is if their parents want something. It's very uncool to kind of go along with what your parents want. So I'm just wondering, do you find, is it designed differently? Like, will a teenager have a completely different interface from an adult? Like, how do you get over that kind of uncool association with parents factor?
No, definitely. The thing is, it's the same application, but they do not have the same environment. Of course, the global design of the application is the same, but everything that is in the teen space was really designed and discussed with teens to make sure that we correctly address their needs. For instance, to give you an example, teens have the possibility to invite some friends, to gain some points, which they can then turn into gifts or into money for a savings scheme, for a savings scheme. Whereas in the parent interface, for instance, when you work on retaining parents, what interests the parents is okay, but every time you ask me to talk of your product to another parent, what's in for me? Parents are not interested in points and in saving scheme, but what will interest them is, for instance, if they can save 1 or 2 or 3 months of paying the fee.
Okay. And you mentioned that you were in banking for 10 years. I mean, how did you end up becoming a fintech founder? Was this something you were always planning on doing? Was it an accident?
Well, it was not an accident, when you spend 10 years in a bank, you have the opportunity to see really a lot of stuff and a lot of different and interesting things. I went to the general inspection, so I've really traveled across all type of activities, and I really saw all type of offers in different geographies. So this was my first position. My second position, I was chief of staff for the people who were running the whole international divisions. And one of my job was also to help them identify new spaces, untapped spaces, and so one of the things we were looking at, I remember, I think it was 2015, we were looking at how players like number 26 were operating the solutions, how they were entering their markets, what their value proposition was. And so it struck me by two things. The first one was that you do no longer need 50 million to build a bank, because you do no longer have to build a full core banking system. So this was the first thing. And the second thing was to say the roadmap was so full that correctly addressing teens' needs was not a top priority for them. And in the same time, I have 2 boys, I have 2 kids, and whether you give them 5 or 20 euros or 1 or 10 euros, they have the feeling that they have the same purchasing power. So when I discussed with some other parents to ask them, how do you teach your own children or your teens the value of money, and how do you manage this? And they just say, we are completely clueless. There is no fitted market solution. And so I said, okay, after 10 years in banking, why not try something else for a couple of years? And so I quit my job and I started launching and working on this project.
And when you, just briefly, if you could, when you knocked on investors' doors, what were the kind of best and worst reactions that you got? Did some of them kind of just laugh you out the room? Were some of them like, wow, this is a
Yes.
great idea?
No, in the beginning, everybody laughs me out of the room. They were just like, it's typical answers. If it was so smart, somebody else would already would already started working on it. How are you going to do that? How are you going to build it? And then, of course, like you get knocked out, I think 95% of the time. And from time to time, you meet some smart people who see the opportunity, who see the vision, and it's piling up. It's piling up, and so we managed to raise enough to really start building a first version of the product, to put the product on the market. And what really surprised everybody, I think, was how. How the market accepted the product, the press coverage it had, and then you go into a positive spiral. And this is then when we were approached by Bouygues Telecom, and so when we kept on working.
Lovely. Diana, sorry, we don't go away because we do actually need to take a quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with Diana Brondel, CEO and founder of Xaalys. Welcome back. Don't forget, if you're not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. And now, Diana, I've got a few more questions for you just before we run out of time. Fintechs are spreading to all sorts of areas that perhaps weren't in their core offering to begin with. There's a lot of cash in the neobank space. You've got legacy banks fighting back. How much harder or easier does that make it for someone today thinking of trying to crack digital banking?
It's very difficult because, like, when you are a fintech and you work against a legacy bank, it's a bit David against Goliath. Fintechs have some advantages that big banks and legacy banks do not have. They are agile. They move fast. They are, for me, really more in the reality and in the day-to-day, like they're really addressing pressing needs. They are not working on everything. They are very focused, so they can develop a technology and expertise which will correctly address a part of the market. Legacy banks, all the more in France, are universal banks. So they go from investment banking, wealth management, retail banking. So they have wider a wider portfolio. Of course, they have more money, but I think less agility. They are still working on not state-of-the-art core banking systems, which is not the case. Yeah, which is not the case of neobanks, and they have like really longer decision spans. So when you are fintech, you can pivot. And the bank has even not made the decision to launch a product, and then Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just aware that we're running out of time, and I just want to make sure that we get to the next question, which is obviously, beyond the pandemic, these past 12 months have also seen a renewed focus on gender and ethnic diversity in boardrooms and as startup founders. I know there are initiatives like the 30% Club chaired by MasterCard's Anne Cairns, for example, trying to get more diversity among women in boardrooms. But is the situation in fintech improving? Do you get a sense of that? And if it's not improving fast enough, what can be done to speed things up?
Okay, to be really frank, no, for me, it's not improving. Like in France, there are less than 10% women founders. And if you let's say, add the diversity subject, I think like it's, like you can count us on one hand. So, so diversity is not improving, but it's you need to leave the time for the time. The thing is, if you want to have more female founders, you need more female in the tech or in the financial space, and those remain male, unfortunately, male dominated segments. So what needs to be done, and it was something I was always against, but I think now it really needs to become a necessity. It's quotas. I never liked the idea of quota because I always thought that when you are put somewhere because of a quota, it might undermine your legitimacy. But in the same time, if you don't do that, if you do not create role models, if you do not create a space, how are we going to improve the global numbers? And then also there is a problem in funding. For female-founded companies, I was reading a very interesting study that was telling that out of $100, 93 go to men and 7 to women.
Wow, that doesn't sound very fair. And I hope that among teenage boys and girls that the division is much more equal. But look, Dinah, I'm really, really sorry that we've run out of time. I know we could talk for much more time if we had it. But I really want to thank you, Dinah Brondel, founder and CEO of Xaalys, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Elliot. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to be back with another big name from the world of finance and technology next week. Hope you'll join us again then. In the meantime, you can keep up to date with all the exclusive interviews and content from the Paris Fintech Forum Communities Program via www.parisfintechforum.com. That's all from me. See you next time. Bye-bye.